Yeah.
I'm Tony Sheard from the Rotary Club of Southampton at the home of long-time Southampton resident Jane Kramer. Jane, now in her 90s, is thought by many to be the matriarch of Southampton. She's an avid volunteer for the local hospital, the Marine Heritage Society, CFUW Probus, just to name a few. And she's often seen around town in a chocolate brown Model A Ford. But recently, I was thumbing through Southampton Remembered, and this was a book that was published to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the town. And I came across an article on page 38 about Jane and Rotary.
It was 1948. They hired me for $25 a week to teach swimming down between the docks, the long dock and the railway dock.
So is that where Jerry's Fries is?
Absolutely. Jerry's Fries was my office.
Is that right?
That was my office. There wasn't
no fries
any restaurant
no fries
there. No. And so I started for July and August. I would have about 100 students for each month. And because people were up 2 or 3 weeks, and so things changed. And so I would start about 10 in the morning with the older children. So 10 in the morning, 10 to 11 was sort of kind of seniors, and then the more for like the Red Cross and life-saving.
All right.
So those from 10 to 12 were more the seniors, teaching them. And then I had an hour off for lunch.
Right.
And then I started at 1 o'clock with beginners. And we had so many beginners. So I was till 3 o'clock with different classes. You can't take a whole bunch. So I would take about, there'd be maybe 15 in a class. Right. And they came at certain times, depending on what level they were at. And so then at 3 o'clock, I would have the intermediates. Came 3 to 4 o'clock. They would have their lessons. And then after 4, I guess add a little more to my poor salary. I gave private lessons.
All right.
I gave private lessons. A lot of Americans wanted private lessons. I don't know why, but that's where I made a little extra money.
Yeah.
But college in those days was $125 a year.
Right.
So it was okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, it was okay. I managed just fine.
And Rotary paid you, was it $25 a week?
$25 a week for the whole bloody 7 years that I taught. I never got a raise.
Is that right?
But I never thought about it. I was happy doing it. But looking back now, I should have.
Asked for a raise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. However, it was fine.
Right. Consider your donation to Rotary. Then.
Rotary Club, that's it. That's for sure.
Now, did the Rotary Club ask you to do anything in return for that? Do you have to go and speak at the club or anything?
Yes, I was the dinner speaker at the end of August.
Oh, right.
That first talk, I thought I'd have a fit. However, I got used to it after a few years, and it was fine.
When you did your talk, what did you talk about?
Well, about the swimming lessons, how many children, just like what I'm telling you,
right.
Pretty well. That was it.
Right.
Yes, they would it was like a report from me, and Mr. Parker of Fitton Parker Furniture.
Yes.
He was the guy that hired me.
Yes.
And he was the guy that paid me.
Right.
So I was a good friend of his, and yes, we got along just fine.
Yeah.
After 5 o'clock, after my private lessons, Ronnie Spence, who was the last lighthouse keeper, he had come over in the morning, left his rowboat on the sand, had walked to the Walker House because his family owned the Walker House at that time, and he'd sit there and drink all afternoon, and then he'd come back about 5:30, and he'd get in his rowboat, and he'd just use one paddle. I don't understand. Anyway, and he'd have trouble, and he's got sort of circling around, and so do you need help, Ronnie? Yes, he did. So I would row him home. And
all across from Jerry's where Jerry's Fries is now
to Chantry Island. And I'd row him over, get him in the house on in his favorite chair, and light the fireplace. And he had supplies there. I'd find something for him to eat because we had to sober him up enough because he had to go up the 106 steps to light the lighthouse. Then he also had to go out on the island dock to light the range light. So
I know those stairs very well because I used to be a guide for the Marine Heritage Society when we did the trips to the island. So I walked up those stairs many times.
So have I.
Yeah. So how did you get back from the island?
I had to swim. I couldn't take his boat. That was the only boat.
How far is it?
And it's about a mile.
Is that right?
But just I think maybe a little a kilometer. No, it's a little more than a kilometer. But
we can always check that.
Yes, Anyway, the only problem was when I'd leave him and go down to the dock. The island at that time was surrounded by black water snakes, and for about 20 feet out. There were no birds on the island at that time, and so these water snakes were all around. So I'd throw rocks in to sort of scare them away, and then dive in and swim like mad to get beyond them. But I could still feel them hitting me, not hitting me. They didn't hurt me, but just
the feeling.
Yes. Oh, slimy. Awful. Then I'd get beyond them, and then I would swim to the railway dock. Now it was much shorter, and people said, "Well, why don't you swim the gap from the long dock to the island dock?" It was 400 feet, but there was quite a current there, and I didn't like it at all. I'd sooner go.
So you came across to the short dock.
So I came straight across to the railway dock, and I couldn't get up on the long dock. It was wood and filled with stones, whereas the railway dock was cement with bars, like metal bars. So I could climb up easily.
All right.
So that's what I did for 7 years, once or twice, and sometimes more, a week.
Right.
And that was,
that was after your swimming lessons?
After the swimming lessons all day, and then I had my swim back home. I didn't tell my family for a while, but then I finally confessed that
you were doing this public service.
That's right. Yes, so anyway, I know it worked out just fine. Oh, swimming. It's interesting. The two docks were 300 yards apart, and so with the senior swimmers, and I'd have an examiner come up. And I ended up examining around here up the Bruce and so on, and that was interesting. However, the Red Cross swimming lessons for seniors were required 100 yards for each stroke that you do. However, I made them go from dock to dock, which was 300 yards. I never told them. So the seniors were in good shape. They never failed because they were in good shape.
But you couldn't grant them a certificate. You had to have a special examiner to come and check you out.
Yeah.
Excellent. But you could go somewhere else.
I became an examiner, and I could go. Yes.
But you couldn't examine your own students.
No, couldn't examine my own.
Excellent.
So anyway, they always wondered why the seniors did so well, because I really had overworked them. Anyway, that worked out all right. But the other problem I had was the docks were high, and children were afraid to dive off them. It was too high. So what I did, I took them to the river. And, the river's pretty dirty. I tied a rope around their wrist. So because once they would dive in, they might not realize which way to come up. And I didn't want to lose them either. And I know the parents would come down, and they were horrified that I did this. But the kids didn't mind, and they would learn to kind of fall in because the dock was only maybe 1.5 feet. So that's where they learned to dive
Right.
if they were nervous about the height.
Yeah.
you
So
know.
that was at the river, on the
At
river by the
the
harbour.
river, yeah,
Right.
down by where the fishing boats are.
Where the
yeah.
fishing boats are, yeah.
And so I did that with a lot of them, but I know the parents had a fit but I never lost one,
Yeah.
and they learned to dive.
Well, this is a wonderful story and a real rich account of days gone by and different ways things that have happened.
happening. Oh yes.
So I really appreciate you doing that. So,
well,
is there anything else about the fishing you're able to tell us?
well, yes. They finally, when I stopped, I went from 1948 to 54 when I graduated from university. Ronnie was retired from the lighthouse. It became automated,
Yes.
and that was the end. And they also, after that, blew up the railway dock.
Yes.
It was cement and starting to fall
Yes.
over, so they blew it up. So I know that people that came after me, a couple of girls that taught swimming for a few years, they had a raft that they floated out and still gave the swimming lessons. Till then, and I'm not sure when they stopped, but they finally gave up because the raft, every rough day, the raft would come in, float in, and then they have to take it back out again. So I don't know. The swimming lessons then stopped there.
So that's a wonderful story. So what intrigues me is that you never became a Rotarian.
I didn't have time.
You didn't have time.
Well, no, it was all men in that day.
It was.
Yes,
That's right.
absolutely.
So when you went to talk to them, and there was all these men, and I've seen photographs of the days gone by, and they're all in dark coloured suits.
Yeah, I know.
And so was that would be very daunting.
Oh, it was the first time. I was terrified, but no, it was fine. And you guys horse around so much at the dining, at the tables and so on, that it was fun. I got a kick out of it.
So
yeah,
as I say, you've been a resident of these parts for many years. So what do you owe your longevity to?
Well, I've always kept myself healthy and eating properly, and I do like to drink. So I
what's
don't
your
know.
favourite tipple?
Rum.
Rum.
Rum. Oh yes, I do like the rum. And there's a new rum out now called Bamboo that I drink straight with just ice and maybe just a spot of water.
Yeah.
It's a smooth rum.
And is it Jamaican rum?
No, it's from the Caribbean, somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know where. And they send it up to Regina to bottle, and then send it across Canada.
Excellent.
So but it's a new one. It's been on the market probably 3 years, I think, now. That's the one I've switched to.
Right. So I think what I'd like to do now is just thank you on behalf of the Rotary Club of Southampton for giving up your time this afternoon to tell us a little bit about the history of one of the events or one of the activities our club sponsored in the past. And it's great to meet a living legend like you, Jane. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.